You're tuning into the O&P Check-In, an SPS podcast. I'm Brendan Erickson, a regional sales manager at SPS. This show brings you the latest happenings in the O&P industry. We're unpacking trends and news from this tight-knit orthotics and prosthetics community. Co-hosting with me today is SPS Sales Account Manager Travis Ricks.
Stoked to be here, Brendan.
Yeah, let's do it, buddy. Let's get started.
Introducing the newest member of the SpryStep line, the SpryStep One, an elegant, durable, effective, and universal AFO, made with a precise selection and layup of diverse composite materials. The SpryStep One meets the individual needs of your patient with only 2 SKUs. Visit spsco.com to learn more about how the SpryStep One can enhance patient comfort and performance. We're thrilled to introduce the Bionic Power Agilik Smart Orthosis, the first powered microprocessor-controlled knee-ankle-foot orthosis designed for adult and pediatric patients with neurological and musculoskeletal gait impairments affecting mobility and function. Backed by an IRB-approved clinical study and published outcomes, the Agilik boosts endurance and mobility with smart, real-time knee extension and flexion. Available through SPS, the Agilik comes with full clinical training and optional consulting services, so you can deliver proven results with confidence. Visit spsco.com to learn more.
Hello, listeners. Today, we have 2 very special guests, the founder of TRS Fillauer, Bob Radocy, and Western New England University Doctoral Experiential Capstone Coordinator, Debra Latour. They're here to talk about activity-specific prosthesis and the ways they can support patients, not just physically, but also emotionally. Welcome, Bob and Debbie.
Thank you, Brendan.
Thank you, Brendan.
Yeah, absolutely. This is going to be fun. So what we typically do, first of all, thank you for joining us. But could you take us off by sharing a little bit about your backgrounds?
Sure. I'll jump in first. My name is Debra Latour. I'm an occupational therapist, and I have been one for a very long time. But even more important than that, I am a lifelong prosthesis user. I have a congenital limb difference of my right forearm and was really fortunate to have parents who were proactive and helped me to acquire a prosthesis at the age of 1. In addition to my work at Western New England, I maintain a small clinical and research practice through my company called Single Handed Solutions. And through those efforts is how I actually met Bob.
Very cool. Bob, how about yourself?
Well, Brendan, I've been involved with prosthetics personally and professionally for over 50 years. My reason for getting involved in prosthetics was due to a car accident I had when I was a senior in college. I wound up being involved in an auto accident, resulted in the crushing of my forearm and an amputation of my left hand. I wore a variety of type of prosthetics for several years, began to become dissatisfied with the existing technology way back in the 1970s. And I had a mixed background in engineering, biology, therapy, and I had a lot of design experience in mechanical drafting and those type of things. So in the mid-70s, when I was in graduate school in Colorado, I began to design some devices for myself for purely personal reasons. Within a few years, I realized there might be a marketability to some of those, and I started a company, TRS, in 1980, which ultimately became Fillauer TRS in 2019, some 40 years later. So I've got experience both personally and professionally as a manufacturer and designer in specializing in upper extremity prostheses and in particular body power and activity-specific devices.
And you're a bit of a star. I think everybody in the O&P field knows you personally and knows of you through a lot of the advertisements in the Edge and seeing you at the shows and all the wonderful work you're doing. Everybody's so amazed at that.
Well, champion of the Cybathlon. So sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt there, but
no, that's a great interruption.
Yeah, Bob's definitely a legend when it comes to the field of upper extremity activity prosthetics. So actually, while we're talking about that, for anyone unfamiliar, could you possibly share what an activity specific prosthesis is and how it can affect the difference in a patient's life?
Well, an activity specific device was that the name I think was coined quite a while ago by John McGillis. Initially, we talked about sports and recreational terminal devices, that type of thing. But we realized pretty soon thereafter that a lot of the devices that we were designing had multiple use. But an activity-specific device really was a prosthetics device designed for a single-purpose type activity. So as opposed to a multifunctional hand where it was designed to do a variety of different things, an activity-specific device might be used only for a very specific thing, like maybe playing basketball, swinging a baseball bat, swinging a golf club. It really wasn't designed to have anthropomorphic type of characteristics or anything like that.
So why is this all important? And I think one of the most important aspects that activity-specific devices bring to the table, bring to the person, the user, is the fact that it allows us the opportunity to participate. And then by being able to participate, it allows us to perform. And to be able to perform on the same level as other people with two hands is huge. Many times, especially children, are involved in athletics, or even how about being able to achieve developmental milestones? So having access to an activity-specific device, especially something like the mushroom tumbler, allows a young child to be able to move on all fours, be able to get into quadruped and learn to crawl. How would they learn to crawl if they didn't have a device upon which to serve as a podium and to offer them movement? And that's just at the very beginning. So can you imagine as the child gets older and is starting to engage in other kinds of social activities, we develop our sense of identity about who we are as human beings through our abilities to participate and perform in different activities. And if those activities can include recreation and team experiences and the arts, then how much more of a full repertoire of our identity will we then be able to develop? And if that's true for children, and we know it is, how much more so for us as adults, particularly if we have an acquired loss?
I think you're absolutely correct. Bob, go ahead.
Yeah, I would applaud and second everything that Debbie was saying. I just put an emphasis on, in my experience over the years, one of the beauties or things that I've seen most exciting about activity-specific prosthetic technology is that it's drawn people into using a prosthesis who had not used prostheses before. In many cases, children grew up who have a congenital hand absence. They use prostheses on and off, and then maybe they just discard them. They don't use them anymore. They get along fine being one-handed primarily. But as they become teenagers, they start to look at themselves. They look at their body. They see that maybe they're growing slightly disproportionately. And all of a sudden they realize they can use a prosthesis for weightlifting, or maybe getting involved with volleyball in a team sport. And it draws them into using a prosthesis again, but maybe the first time in a long time. And they learn from that, and it excites them, and they may become better overall prosthetic users because of that. Now, it's not always true. They may use a prosthesis just for an activity specific, but Debbie and I always believe that trying to use a prosthesis and being more bilaterally functional, bimanually functional is an important thing for everybody.
I definitely want to second what Bob's saying. I just, as a person who does play sitting volleyball and on the U.S. national team, I have players and teammates that wouldn't wear, they were congenitals and would not wear a prosthetic on a normal basis. But when it comes to being active and doing sports, it is definitely where they go. And I would say that the TRS units are seen around the world being used by these players. So it definitely gets people out there using their prosthesis.
I think it just opens people's worlds and helps that mental growth so much. So thank you guys for everything that you're doing, first of all. And then, Bob, I want to start with you on this one. Through your extensive history within both being a user and designing and being, so academically in tune with this, can you paint a little bit of a historical picture and some of the milestones or some of the things that you thought were super exciting changes that kind of brought us to where we are today?
Certainly, I'd be glad to do that, Brennan. Early on back in the 70s, there were just a couple of more primitive activity-specific devices. One that was designed to be used with a first baseman's glove, and the other one was a bowling ball adapter. And I looked at both of those devices. I didn't use those myself. I didn't think they were functionally useful enough. And In some cases, the bowling ball adapter was more designed for a person with bilateral hand absence. As I personally got involved in the 1980s, I played a lot of soccer. There was no terminal devices out there that would really allow me to engage in soccer using a prosthesis safely. I used to tape a tennis ball to the end of my prosthesis for fall protection. But then I couldn't throw the ball in from the sidelines because I didn't have another hand. So the drive for development of prosthesis initially had a lot to do with my own personal needs and wanting to get involved. So I designed the Super Sport and Free Flex hands, which were just very, very simple rubber flexible devices that could be used for a variety of ball sports and tumbling and things like that. As we moved through and with the introduction of those, people started to become more interested in the thought about activity-specific devices. And I had numbers of different individuals approach us as a manufacturer saying, oh, I'd like to play basketball. I'd like to do this, right? I'd like to hold a camera without potentially dropping it. And so we were driven by the input of consumers that came to me and came to my company and said, can you do this for us? And we were open. We were a small company. We had a lot of flexibility to do things. So we just started to follow the direction that consumers wanted to go. So let me leave it there and let Debbie input a little bit maybe, and we can just, open this discussion up a little more.
I think one of the things that Bob said that really strikes me about this is how devices have developed based on needs. So what's that saying about necessity is the mother of invention? Right?
Mother of all invention.
Exactly. So here's one of the things that makes Bob different. Bob listens to people. So people have approached him about, and this sounds like I'm a cheerleader for Bob, and I kind of am, but this is what sets TRS and the culture of TRS apart and what the activity-specific devices are based on. It's based on people who are wanting to participate and perform, to enjoy, to experience, and then sharing their desire, their needs, and having somebody listen and say, there may not be a tool or a device for that yet, but let's see what we can do. And investigating what's involved in that particular activity. How can I help this person achieve this? And in knowing that I'm helping one person, I'm actually helping a whole lot. I'm helping a whole population, not just one person. And that's what these devices do. They make that kind of a difference. And it starts with listening.
I would have loved to be a fly on the wall in some of your listening sessions, Bob. And I bet like if you talk to anybody who's a business person, probably would just write this down and say, Bob's first part of R&D is just listening. And how important is that versus like going out and trying to invent something without just listening to what people need?
Well, I have to agree with that, certainly. And luckily, I've been able to do that. And there have been a lot of people willing to want to share and come to us with ideas over the years. One of the things I think I wanted to mention was one of the realizations and one of the reasons I think the company and activity-specific devices started to become more popular was the introduction or the inclusion of the knowledge of biomechanics into the development of these devices. I grew up in the 1950s. I think I was lucky to have grown up in that era when you could run around the neighborhood and play basketball and baseball and and football on the street, things like that. We don't see that as much anymore, but I had an opportunity to do all kinds of sports and recreation things when I was a kid, from hunting and fishing, playing baseball, playing hockey, street hockey, ice hockey, et cetera. So when I became an amputee when I was 22, I had a knowledge of what it took to do all those things, what it felt like to swing a bat well. I was lucky enough to play in the Little League. When I was 12 years old, I went to the World Series. So I had a lot of experience in doing things. I was never a super athlete, but I was a good all-around athlete at a lot of things, playing soccer, whatever. But it gave me the insight of understanding the biomechanics. And when I designed some of these devices, I was able to sort of immediately, inherently know what it was going to take and what it should feel like to swing a baseball bat with a prosthesis, what biomechanic elements that it took. So it was a lucky combination of my background and experiences, and then realizing and seeing the development of certain kind of material technology that would allow us to do that even better, in particular polyurethane, which allowed us to create really functional movement resilient joints to put into and implement into prosthetics devices to give energy storage and give you the feel like what you had was really your own hand and wrist working.
It's a great point.
Yeah, I love all that, and I've always been a big supporter of having someone who is obviously an end user be the one to create these devices. And Bob, I would say your lived experience plus your ability to listen to other people's needs have obviously given rise to the extensive TRS lineup that's out there. I mean, it's amazing what you've made available. I know you've touched on this already a little bit, but Debbie, we're looking beyond mobility. How do you see these devices influencing a patient's, sense of self and maybe their overall well-being as a person?
Yeah, I love that question. Thank you so very much for asking it. As an occupational therapist, I tend to engage in holistic practice. So for me, meeting with any of my patient clients, it's about helping them to access whatever the task or activity is that they would like to be able to accomplish. But it's also about the mix of the body, the mind, and the spirit, and considering all of those elements. So having access, having achievement, being able to work towards success and ultimately independence in very functional tasks, in social function, because we are social beings. We commune with each other. The first thing we do when we meet each other is to shake hands. If we know each other well, we might embrace or, have more physical contact. The point is that we need to feel comfortable in our own skin to be able to do that. When we have multiple opportunities to develop our identity and develop confidence in who we are, it only enhances that and helps us to feel less uncomfortable in the community in those very social circumstances, because we know that people are not always nice. And that when you look a little different, and I always remind people, we actually all look a little different, unless you happen to be an identical twin. We are all different and unique. But people like Bob and I, among countless others with other kinds of differences, are often pointed at or stared at. And we need to be able to handle that. And all of this works together, that body, mind, and spirit works together toward our wellness, physical and mental and spiritual wellness, our well-being. So our sense of safety. How safe do I feel if I'm in a situation where people are constantly pointing at me or, what happened to you? What's that? Oh, weird. The things that people say. Thoughtlessly, not meaning to be hurtful, but being able to talk candidly to my patient clients about all of this helps them. It helps them to develop their own skills and confidence and comfort to be able to manage and navigate the community and themselves within it, feeling good about who they are. So ultimately, that wellness, that well-being, both physical, mental, and as well as spiritual, affects a person's quality of life. And that is something that each and every one of us on this earth deserve. We deserve to enjoy a beneficial quality of life.
I couldn't agree more. And you guys touched on the adoption rates, I think specifically with upper limb prosthesis. It's a little bit lower than obviously a weight-bearing lower limb prosthesis just due to necessity. But can you tell me about the confidence when somebody does use one of these devices and how maybe their rate of adoption goes up or down?
Yeah, it's funny that you ask about that, because I remember being a little girl and having a body-powered device. And I'll be honest, I didn't like it. I didn't like the harness. I didn't want to wear it. And my parents will tell you that I threw it away. They salvaged it. They saved it from the furnace, but
the furnace.
The furnace. Yes, we had a furnace, and those were the days. So I grew up in the 60s, and we still had furnaces in our basement. And my dad would empty the trash in it every night. And this one particular night, I was in bed. I'm the eldest of 6. So I could hear my mother calling to my father saying, "Where's Debbie's arm?" And, "Oh no, you didn't empty the trash yet." And sure enough, not only could I hear them running downstairs, but they grabbed me first and made me sit there at the bottom of the stairs and watch as my father opened up the furnace and unwrapped one of those wire hangers and pulled it out. And I was about 3.5 years old, but I remember sitting there and thinking, I don't like that arm, but something about it is important for my dad to open up the fire and get it out of there. And that was a turning point for me where maybe I still didn't like it, but I wore it. And it was not an option in my family anyway. I was going to wear that thing because my parents viewed it as a privilege. But all these years later, I feel that I have an unfair advantage with my patient clients. I have an unfair advantage in teaching them to utilize their prostheses because I wear and use one too. And I can use that sense of identity that I have, that confidence that I've been able to develop, those experiences, the ways of living and doing that I have been able to achieve, and use those as a springboard to help people. Do we all do things the same way? No, but I can use those to help people take those next steps so that they can achieve their own ways of living and feel comfortable with it.
I wanted to just reemphasize with all the things that Debbie said is that when you get this, you use a prosthesis, and if you develop some success from using a prosthesis, it's a very exciting thing. It's a stimulating thing. And it does fire you up to want to do more. So your question about, would you be interested in using, additional devices? I think that's definitely true. I've worked with lots and lots of people over the years who started out trying one particular thing out, might be a weightlifting device, and realizing that all of a sudden, wow, I can go kayaking. I can do this other thing. And it expands their life. It expands their self-confidence. Just for myself personally, when I was developing things, I had a goal in mind, say swinging a baseball bat. I grew up as a left-hander throwing, but I batted right-handed. And I hadn't swung a bat other than unilaterally with one hand for a long time. When I developed the pinch hitter and I put it on and I swung a bat for the first time and hit a ball two-handed for the first time after many, many years, it's hard to describe the excitement and the thrill and the satisfaction of doing it again. For me, I had done it before two-handed. Now I was doing it with a prosthesis, and I was replicating it. It was the same. I felt the same thing. Interestingly, when I developed, I used to throw left-handed, and I played center field. I lost my left hand. I never thought I'd ever throw a baseball with my left prosthesis, ever. And ultimately, we developed a device called the Cobra that allowed me to do that. And I had to relearn to throw a baseball with my right hand. I just never felt as confident and capable of throwing right-handed as I did left-handed. And after I developed the Cobra, it was just an amazing thing. My hand and eye coordination, my instinct came back after well over 30 years of not throwing a baseball left-handed. And I could throw the ball instinctively to people at great distances with good speed. And I just can't tell you how exhilarating it was to have that kind of fulfillment. But just reemphasizes all the things that Debbie was talking about.
Yeah, this is awesome.
Do you guys ever come across any challenges that these patients or individuals would have when they're experiencing navigating using an activity-specific prosthesis? And if that's the case, what advice do you have maybe for their clinician on how to help them overcome those roadblocks?
So, the biggest or the most important thing about a prosthesis, it's interface, it's fit. It doesn't matter what you put on the end of a prosthesis. If it doesn't fit well, if it's not comfortable, if it doesn't provide range of motion and security, you're really not going to be able to perform very well. So when you're working with anybody that's interested in activity specific or rigorous activities, I like to drill down with that individual. I have them send me pictures of their prosthesis, how it's designed, how well it stays on. I ask them to maybe go through a series of range of motion under load. How does their prosthesis stay on? How comfortable are they with their existing prosthesis? In many cases, they have a prosthesis that is really not designed to handle the rigors of what might be a more rigorous or more active specific activity like weightlifting and things like that. They need to be coached a little bit into how to make sure they can communicate with their prosthetist so that they can get a better prosthetic fit. And there's great new technologies that continue to evolve about how to make a better socket, more comfortable, that type of thing. So I think, I'll let Debbie input here too, but it boils down to the prosthesis itself. It's very important to find a prosthetist who is qualified in upper extremity prosthetics. A lot of good prosthetists A lot of people make great legs. They don't have a lot of experience in upper limb. You really want to drill down and find someone who's got a lot of experience in upper limb prosthetics to ensure that you're going to get what you need in a prosthesis. Debbie?
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with everything that Bob said, because the relationship with a prosthesis starts with the socket, right? That's the point of contact, right? And if you think about it, the prosthesis comes to us, it's a device, it's external to our body, and we put it on. And at first, we're not so sure we like it or see value in it. It's kind of like when we meet each other for the first time. We meet someone, we don't know them. We need to find some common ground. We look for things that we might like or respect about the person, and we develop maybe a relationship with them. They become hopefully our friend. They move beyond being an acquaintance. They become our friend. And sometimes we end up with a best friend or a partner or whatever, right? I like to think about these, all the ones I have, as being among my friends. They're a part of me. I'm definitely one of those people that embodies my prosthesis is a part of me. Having someone who will help them develop a rapport and a relationship with their prosthesis is the first step. So if the socket is not well fitting, and that needs to be fixed, because if it's not well fitting and it's not a match and it's not friendly to them, they're not going to wear it. It is going to be in the closet somewhere on the floor or in the trash. The other thing that is abysmal, if the fit isn't good, is that the second problem that happens is that the person may not have had the opportunity for good training. So having someone move beyond the idea of being able to open and close the device and actually show the person how to use it. How do I apply this grasp and release to being able to zip my jacket so that I can put my coat on at school to go out to recess and I'm not going to freeze, or cut my food so that I can go out to dinner with people and not have to ask wait staff to cut my food for me, or my friends, or pick up the food like I'm a Neanderthal and just, be eating that way. So actually having someone train them and teach them how to use it. Unfortunately, most occupational therapists only get one lecture and maybe one lab experience to understand prosthetic technology. And when you think about the different kinds of devices, I look at my own shelf and where I keep my prostheses here at home. And I've got activity specific. I've got a body power. I have a 2-site biosystem. I have a pattern recognition arm. And then I have terminal devices to go along with it. So how is a therapist who's had one lecture and one lab be able to understand all that, to be able to provide effective treatment and interventions? So one of my quests has been to help bring the training to the therapist, creating coursework, continuing ed courses that are affordable, writing chapters in textbooks so that there is an extension of maybe what I'm doing with my patients and other people can learn, because I'm not going to live forever and I can't treat everybody. I can listen, I can help those therapists, but they need a roadmap. They need something more than just one lecture and one lab to be able to work with all of the Debbie and Bobs of the future. It's another reason why Bob and I created the Empowered People, Empowered Prosthetics video series. It's something, there's all these techniques and tools that are available for healthcare professionals, but what's out there for the average person who is missing a limb? Nothing. And if they can't access these professionals who have experience and have the training, then how might they learn? And what we do know is that we learn from each other, and it's called peer instruction. Right? I use it in my classroom all the time at the university. I'll have my students teach each other sometimes because they're using generational context and language. And the way that they can impart and communicate might be different than the way I do as an older person. And when I'm working with someone who does not have two hands, there's a connection because we have a commonality and they recognize that I'm there to help them. They're not suspicious. They're able to receive it from somebody like me more than maybe a two-handed person. No offense against all you two-handed people.
That's awesome. I love it. I'm chuckling over here.
I say things like that just to see if you're listening.
No, it's great. It's great. So to tell you the truth, I'm just sit back and listen. Basically, you told me 3 times I need to listen just because you said it's so important in all of everything that we've talked about today. And I even wrote it down. But I guess we're to a point now where Travis and I are just very thankful to have listened to you guys. Your knowledge is amazing. Your energy is amazing. Your achievements are amazing. Everything you've done is awesome. We want to thank you very much. And we also want to give you a little bit of time. We want to listen to you. What else would you like to add that we might not have touched on?
I have something. I can't wait to talk about this. So you asked a question a little while ago about access or some of the problems that people have with activity-specific devices. And one of the things that I have noticed, and like I said, I've been an OT for a very long time and have focused at least half my career, which is more than the last 25 years by a long shot, on upper limb prosthetic rehab. And one of the things that I have found is the ability to access activity-specific devices and have reimbursement, have funding stakeholders take responsibility for these. We have a system here in the United States, and there are other kinds of systems, some similar, some different in other parts of the world. But the fact of the matter is access to the device and a recreational device, because oftentimes insurance does not want to reimburse for something it does not perceive as functional. And it's important to remember that recreation is actually functional. Play is the primary occupation of children. Well, it's also an important occupation of adolescents and adults and everybody in between, right? That is part of the balance that we have toward our quality of life, toward our wellness, our well-being, our abilities to participate and perform well and achieve an identity that we're happy with. One of the ways that we can do that is through, at least in our country, but it's, I'm sure, going to be global because the World Health Organization themselves ascribes to it. But it's the idea that every body on earth can move.
That's great, Deb. I agree. Hey, for myself, I'm excited to be here. I'm one of those people who can't stop doing things in regards to designing and modifying stuff. I know other people like me. I buy something, I got to fix it. I got to make it a little bit different. I got to tweak it. I can never leave anything the way it is. I've always been that way. So as long as I'm around, I look forward to hopefully being able to continue to do what we do, improving on the devices that we have, using new manufacturing technologies become available to us, and promoting activity for people who have no hands. I'm particularly excited about going back to Skills for Life coming up next month. We have a brand new, it's been in evolution for a couple years, but we have a golf device that actually is designed for persons that have no hands to swing a golf club. It's really never been done before. Well, swing not only a golf club, but swing it well. We have some people hitting a ball 150 yards, one-handed, using 2 prostheses. So it's pretty exciting for me to see that evolve and continue to evolve. We're also going to be introducing a prototype of a new device for pickleball at the Skills Conference and seeing how people do that. No one's ever seen it before, so it'll be its first introduction. So these are the kind of things that excite me, and I thank you for the opportunity to share all that with you today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
To learn more about Bob and Debbie's work, Fillauer TRS, and the Empowering People, Empowering Prosthetics series, follow the links in our show notes.
Thank you for listening to the O&P Check-In, an SPS podcast. We hope you enjoyed the episode, and if you did, be sure to leave a review and subscribe to the show on Spotify, Apple Podcast, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Have a question or topic suggestion? Email us at spspodcast@spsco.com. See you next time.